following video is a presentation of the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau of the United States Department of the Treasury. The Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, or TTB, regulates and collects the federal tax on alcohol beverages in the United States. One aspect of this regulation is the enforcement of what are known as trade practice laws and regulations, which are designed to promote a level playing field among industry members, as well as to help ensure retailer independence. This video series will explore sections of the trade practice regulations, including tied house, exclusive outlet, consignment sales, and commercial bribery. In this video, we will discuss tied house practices and the rules and regulations associated with them. We are presenting this information to help you understand and comply with the laws and regulations that the TTB administers. This video does not establish any new or change any existing definitions, interpretations, standards, or procedures regarding those laws and regulations. Also, this presentation may be made obsolete by changes in laws and regulations. For the most current requirements, please consult the applicable laws and regulations, which are available at our website, ttb.gov. Throughout this presentation, you will see references to 27 U.S.C., which stands for Title 27 of the United States Code. This is where the trade practice laws of the Federal Alcohol Administration Act, or FAA Act, are codified. You will also see references to 27 CFR, which stands for Title 27 of the Code of Federal Regulations, which is where the federal trade practice regulations are codified. As you go through the presentation, please make note of the citations that are made to either 27 U.S.C. or 27 CFR. This is where you'll be able to find additional information and the full text of the specific law or regulation cited. Under the Tied House rules and regulations, it's unlawful for an industry member to induce a retailer, directly or indirectly, to purchase alcohol beverages from the industry member to the exclusion of alcohol beverages offered for sale in interstate commerce by other persons. Generally, when we refer to an industry member, we mean anyone who produces, distributes, or imports alcohol beverage products. A retailer is anyone who sells alcohol beverage products to consumers. The Tied House regulations can be found in 27 CFR Part 6, while the law can be found in 27 U.S.C. 205B. The Tied House regulations apply to activities between industry members and retailers. An industry member is a producer, importer, or wholesaler. They do not apply to activities between industry members. So that means a transaction between, for example, a producer and a wholesaler is not subject to the Tied House regulations. Under the Tied House rules, there are 7 means to induce. When we say means to induce, that is another way of saying ways to induce. These are specific practices that could lead to a Tied House violation. The first one is acquiring or holding an interest in a retailer's license, such as an industry member owning a percentage of the retail business. An industry member who owns a retailer outright, that is 100%, does not hold an interest that violates this provision. Anything less than 100% ownership is considered a means to induce. The second is acquiring an interest in the real or personal property of a retailer's business, such as an industry member acquiring a mortgage on a retailer's land or building. As with the first means to induce, 100% ownership of the retailer by an industry member is not a means to induce, and anything less than 100% is a means to induce. The third is giving, renting, lending, or selling to a retailer equipment, fixtures, signs, supplies, money, services, or other things of value. TTB regulations list a number of exceptions that apply to this specific provision, allowing certain things of value to be given to retailers. We will cover those exceptions, the Subpart D exceptions, later in this video. Keep in mind, however, that the Subpart D exceptions only apply to this B3 provision. The fourth means is paying or crediting a retailer for advertising, display, or distribution services. An example of this would be paying slotting fees, where an industry member pays a retailer for shelf space or to get its product on tap. The fifth means to induce is by guaranteeing a loan or repaying a retailer's financial obligation. Number 6 is extending credit to a retailer beyond 30 days from the date of delivery. Finally, number 7 is requiring the retailer to take and dispose of a certain quota of alcohol beverages. An example of this would be requiring a retailer to purchase one product in order to be able to purchase an allocated product. We refer to this as tie-in sale, or requiring a retailer to buy a certain amount of product each week or month. Here are some real-life examples of inducements under Tight House. An industry member provides free labor to reset stock on a retailer's premises, including another industry member's products. An industry member is allowed to move its own stock for a retailer under the Subpart D exceptions we talked about earlier, but may not move the stock of another industry member. Another example would be if an industry member purchases or rents display space or shelf space from a retailer, or in other words, paying a slotting allowance. Or if an industry member pays for live entertainment on an on-premises retail establishment in exchange for product promotion or preferential display space within the retailer's premises. This would also apply if you were making the payment through a third-party marketing firm or promoter. A final example would be if an industry member tells a retailer they have to buy a slow-moving alcohol beverage product in order to obtain a product that is in high demand. We refer to this type of arrangement as a tie-in sale. Now let's talk a little bit about the Subpart D exceptions. The regulations in 27 CFR Part 6 list some exceptions that allow certain items and services or things of value to be provided or sold to retailers, subject to limitations and conditions, without being considered a means to induce under 205(b)(3). The list of exceptions are found in 27 CFR Part 6, Subpart D, hence the name Subpart D exceptions. The Subpart D exceptions include product displays, point-of-sale advertising material, consumer tastings and sampling at retail locations, limited equipment and supplies, and stocking, rotation, and pricing services. There are very specific limitations to these exceptions. Generally, the items listed as Subpart D exceptions are items or services that are of little value. There are two things to remember when looking at the exceptions. First, if it's not explicitly stated in the regulations as an exception, it's probably not covered by the exception. Don't assume something similar or related is also an exception. Second, these exceptions do not apply to other provisions of the FAA Act. They only apply to the 205(b)(3) rule against giving, renting, lending, or selling things of value to a retailer. What that means is that you cannot supply something listed as a Subpart D exception to induce the retailer under another provision of Section 205(b). For example, you cannot provide allowable equipment and services in exchange for preferential product placement or shelf space. In addition to some of the limits and conditions, there are also some record-keeping requirements. For some exceptions to apply, industry members must keep and maintain records on their premises for some of the items they furnish to retailers, including product displays, equipment and supplies, samples, coupons, participation in Retailers Association activities, and merchandise. Required records must include the name and address of the retailer, the date the item was furnished, the item that was furnished, the industry member's cost of the item, and any charges to the retailer. So, when does a violation occur? Under federal regulations, there are certain elements that must be present to prove a Tight House violation. First, we have to show there was an inducement provided from the industry member to the retailer. Remember, this does not apply to transactions between two industry members. This also does not apply in situations where an industry member wholly owns the retailer. Second, the activities must have occurred in or had an effect upon interstate or foreign commerce. For tied house practices, this element is satisfied when the products being excluded are sold or offered for sale in interstate or foreign commerce, the primary clause, and either 1, if the inducement was made in the course of interstate or foreign commerce, or 2, the inducement substantially restrained or prevented transactions in interstate or foreign commerce, or 3, the effect of the inducement is to prevent, hinder, or deter others from selling their products to the retailer in interstate or foreign commerce. Because most alcohol beverages are sold or offered for sale in interstate commerce, the interstate commerce requirement is generally satisfied in all cases. For more information about this element, please watch our video on the FAA Act history and background. The third element that we must show to prove a tied house violation is that the inducement must have resulted in exclusion of another industry member's products. There are 2 elements to exclusion, both of which must be proven. First, TTB must prove that the inducement resulted in the retailer purchasing less than it would have of a competitor's product. Second, TTB must prove that the practice places or has the potential to place the retailer's independence at risk. Keep in mind that the tied house regulations describe certain prohibited activities that the TTB has determined place retailer independence at risk. If you engage in one of those activities, exclusion exists if the retailer purchased less than it otherwise would have of a competitor's product. The specific activities are found in 27 CFR 6.152 and include resetting stock on a retailer's premises other than your own stock, paying slotting fees, for example, purchasing or renting, display, shelf, storage, or warehouse space, ownership of less than 100% interest in a retailer where such ownership is used to influence a retailer's purchases, requiring a retailer to purchase one product in order to be able to purchase another product at the same time. In addition to these, the regulations also provide criteria that are indicators that a particular practice may place retailer independence at risk. These criteria are codified in 27 CFR section 6.153. The fourth and final element that must be present to prove a tied house violation applies only to practices involving malt beverages. That is, we need to show there is a state law that is similar to the federal tied house statute. The state law only has to be similar, not exact, and it doesn't have to be a law that specifically pertains to alcohol. This element does not apply to transactions involving wine and distilled spirits. For more information on the similar state law element, please watch our video on the FAA Act history and background. If TTB cannot establish all of these elements, TTB cannot prove a violation of federal law. The inducement standing alone is not a federal violation. State laws may be different, so make sure that you are familiar with the laws of the states in which you operate. If you have any questions about the tied house regulations or what activities may be prohibited, please send an email to tradepractices@ttb.gov. And make sure to watch our additional videos which discuss the FAA Act history and background, exclusive outlets, consignment sales, and commercial bribery.